everyone, I'm James Halloran, nonprofit partner with James Moore, and this is the last video in our three-part SNAP series on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for nonprofits. You all know Corinne LaRoche by now, fellow nonprofit partner here at James Moore, and she's going to discuss 5 strategies for fostering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in your not-for-profit.
One of the things that you can do, I think, again, just kind of an easy lift, easy place to start is maybe do a salary study. So do like a blind salary study, look at the salaries of everyone you have in every position across the board, and then look for any discrepancies. Look for discrepancies across, gender, across race, different things like that. And if there is a discrepancy there, try not to be defensive and maybe just ask yourself why. Is there a reason for that, and is that something that maybe we need to address? Again, a lot of that bias is unconscious. So I think it's important to recognize that it may be there, even if you didn't intend for it to be there. So doing that salary study and kind of recognizing here are some things that we could potentially rectify is a good way to start. Another thing I would recommend is to evaluate specifically, your dress code. Look at your dress code and see, do we have our dress code just to put out a specific type of image, or do we have a dress code because this is really necessary for, job needs or workplace safety or something like that? Because while it may sound silly, a dress code can be a limiting factor for certain people when they're seeking out employment. If you're saying you have to wear a suit and tie to work every day, that's expensive, it's difficult, and it is a barrier to entry for certain people. So that is something to think about as well. Similarly, I think maybe just looking at your job requirements. So looking at your job posts on Indeed, and saying, do we really need a master's degree for this job position? Is that just something that we've always put on there? Or is that really what it takes to get this job done? Because a lot of times we put these limitations on this job and we don't even let people apply because they don't have this advanced degree, when really, an AA degree and some on-the-job training would get the job done. And I think that is very common in a lot of areas. So I think that's a great way to foster diversity, is by looking at the requirements on your job training and by not inflating the requirements for those types of positions. And then one more thing I would say is to try to really examine on the nonprofit side your boards. So kind of like in the example I mentioned earlier, you can really utilize your board to your benefit for diversity. And that can be very difficult because sometimes it is hard to, the type of people who have time to dedicate to be on a nonprofit board are oftentimes older, oftentimes wealthier. They kind of skew towards a certain demographic. But if you can recruit people to your board that come from a variety of different demographic groups, you will have a much stronger board, and it will make your organization stronger. And I would add to that also considering term limits and making sure that you're cycling in and out new blood and fresh ideas pretty consistently, because that really helps you keep that diversity and changing that mindset frequently as well. And then the last thing I'll add is just using inclusive language is something that I know a lot of people tend to get hung up on this one, but it really can be very simple. I mean, just something as easy as, instead of saying, hello, ladies and gentlemen, just saying, hello, everyone. Just little things like that can make a big difference in making people feel welcome. Maybe looking at your paternity or your maternity and paternity leave benefits and just saying, how are we wording these? Are these overly gendered? Can we make these a little more equitable without substantively changing the nature of our benefits? I think there's a lot of things that we can do by just changing a word here or there that could go a long way to promoting inclusion and belonging in the workplace. So I could go on for forever on that, but I wanted to give a few concrete examples that are really easy to start with because I know sometimes this can feel really hard, and it feels like such a big lift sometimes. You say, well, what can I really do? If you can start with even just those small little things, maybe something so small as, whiting out the names on your resumes when you're evaluating applicants, something like that. That right there eliminates unconscious bias in at least one way. And it's such an easy thing to do. So just trying to think of little ways like that you and your organization can take a step in the right direction, I think can really push your organization in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, those are some great ideas, Corinne. I remember years ago the big push on resumes where you would put a little picture of yourself on your resume.
Mm,
That was, a decade ago, that was very common. You'd see resumes with that on it, and now you really don't, see it
yeah.
at all. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Corinne, for chatting with us today on the importance of embracing acceptance at your organization with the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And thank you, everyone, for turning into the Snap Network, and we hope to see you next time.